consists of people who are born. Gen Z consists of people who are born between the years 1995 and 2012. Me personally, I was born in 2004, which I guess would be the second half of Gen Z, and I'm 20 years old already. I'm not sure it takes somebody with a PhD in human sciences to figure out that if you're Gen Z, bro, it's time to admit the hard truth. We are unk status. I could care less if you're 15 years old or if you're 30. We as Gen Z are in this together. So if I'm feeling bad about being old, then you should too. You know what type of mentality that is that I have? The unk mentality. Maybe it's just because I'm salty of the things that I would say when I was younger. I remember back when I was in elementary school, I would constantly say, I wish I was older. But you know, now that I'm out of school, I'm a grown man with hair on my balls. I'm slowly starting to realize that's possibly one of the dumbest things I've ever said. I mean, when I was a kid, I didn't really have much to worry about. All I would need to do was go to school, come home, watch cartoons, and go to sleep. But now that I'm older, I gotta worry about taxes, health insurance, groceries, paying bills, the government coming to my house to look for my outstanding warrant. Yo, what the heck? Basically, what I'm trying to say is that you had nothing to worry about when you were a kid. And now that I'm thinking back to all the things that I used to complain about when I was younger, bro, I was just complaining about a whole lot of nothing. Aw, why are you crying?
My day didn't start at 0. It started at you're already behind.
I guess
Every day
he makes a pretty good
tasks,
point.
None.
We do gotta worry about fucking adult shit now.
Want to go to school? Well, don't worry, because in 10 years, you gotta pay $8,000 worth of taxes to the IRS. When I was younger, I thought being a grown-up was the best possible thing on planet Earth. I thought you didn't have to worry about anything else. No more being told what to do. You had the freedom to do whatever you wanted. So imagine my disappointment when I reach adulthood and I find out that it's illegal to drink 6 beers and then go for a joyride. In fact, there's a lot of things that I wish I knew about adulthood when I was younger. I don't know.
One of the worst things to deal with as an adult is not being allowed to do shit. One of the hardest things to deal with as an adult, because everyone, you know, you always think, everyone thinks that adults are allowed to do whatever they want. But there's so many laws you have to abide by every single day. It just gets normal at one point. And I mean, you know, certain laws make a lot of sense. You know, it's for the greater good. But some laws don't make sense. And you slowly, as you get older, you realize that the amount of money you make determines how many laws you need to abide by. The older you get, you realize that the amount of money you make determines the amount of laws that you need to abide by. I'm gonna just leave it at that.
No, you'd think that the school system would at least try to teach you what being an adult is like, considering you're going there to learn. But no, instead of leaving school knowing actual things that will help me in my day-to-day life for the next 60 years, I instead left knowing how many apples Susie has after giving some to Mike. Officer, I'm not allowed to speed in a school zone? Allow me to tell you about the Pythagorean theorem. I don't know how to change a tire whatsoever, but hey, you know, I'm pretty good at geometry dash. The older up in age I start to get, the more
teaching us not how to change a tire is low-key insane if you really think about it. I mean, not teaching us how to change a tire. That is one of the most important like things ever. But I mean, I guess you could pay someone to do it for you. So that's probably why they don't teach it at school. I don't know.
I'm kind of starting to realize that 90% of adults have absolutely no idea what they're doing. Like, if you meet somebody who is freshly 18, right? And they're talking about all these different adult things, essentially just acting older than they are, I want you guys to know there's a big chance that it's a load of hooey. When I sit down and think back to when I was 18 years old, the first thing that comes to mind is how much I've changed. I mean, I feel like a completely different person. For example, I created this YouTube channel literally 3 days after my 18th birthday, and I was fresh out of high school, and the type of content that I was making was very 18-year-old coded, let's say.
Okay, now I just want to say I am not the biggest or partaker in the big ol' marriage.
Okay, let's move on. That was terrible. And now that I'm 20 years old, I'm being way more productive. I'm watching all of Skibbity Toilet for 5 hours. Isn't that great? I mean, for the first like 6-7 years of your adulthood, you're not even really a functioning member of society yet. You're still figuring out how to do all these new things. I mean, think of it. You got stuff like moving out for the first time, getting your
Adulthood, you don't actually start understanding how adulthood works until you're 25.
first car, man, even finding a job. Now, I know this next statement is definitely gonna sound like I'm making a big excuse for a lot of Gen Z, which it is, but the majority of us were locked inside for like 3 years. Now, no matter where you are within the age spectrum, whether you're 70 years old or 10 years old, you got to admit that this must have some type of detriment, right? For a couple years, we were literally not allowed to go outside. It's still crazy to wrap my head around the fact that quarantine wasn't 2 or 3 years ago. This was 5 years ago. It's crazy to think that we're closer to 2030 than we are to the very first case of said illness.
Wow,
that
that's
caused the lockdown.
crazy.
And it's because of that a lot of us didn't have the same experiences that our parents or even some of your older siblings may have. For example, a lot of Gen Z weren't able to have jobs when they were teenagers. And that's because they were locked inside their house. You were literally not allowed to work at a store. Now, thankfully, I was lucky enough to be able to get my first job when I was 16, almost immediately after lockdown. I worked at a Marshall's for about a year and a half as a cashier, and I met a crazy amount of people who were like 20, 22 years old, and that was their first job. Of course, though, when working that job, you also had to deal with your fair amount of old people. And I'm gonna be the one with big enough balls to say it because apparently nobody has said it enough. Why are old people such dicks to Gen Z? Like, when I was working at this cashier job, the amount of old people that I would encounter that would just belittle us was ridiculous. Old people are old people. They don't like any generation below them, or really anything for that matter. They hate millennials, they hate Gen X, but for some reason, they seem to really hate Gen Z. You have old people left and right telling Gen Z that we just simply don't work hard enough and that we'll have trouble being successful. Meanwhile, they were somehow able to afford an entire 5-bedroom house at the age of 21 by simply running a lemonade stand. And yes, I am gonna play the victim. Look at the price of a McDonald's burger from 1970 versus 2025. Bro, I gotta ask Birdie to pay for my Chick-fil-A, and you think that I'm able to afford a house on my own? I like to cope and tell myself that maybe old people are simply just jealous of the things that we had. I mean, think of it.
Well, the reality is that I know people younger than me that can afford a house. I know people younger than me that can afford a house because their parents taught them how to save and invest since they were 12 years old. So you can't even blame that on the economy. You have to blame it on financial literacy.
That Gen Z growing up had all different types of technology. We had iPads, PlayStations. Now, what did old people have to entertain themselves with? Oh, 3 sticks and a copy of Huckleberry Finn? Bro, I ain't gonna lie, if I had to read this boring I'd be pissed off too. What's still crazy to me is that Gen Z had access to all of this different type of technology. It was so easily accessible, we were essentially just guinea pigs. I mean, I think back to my first ever electronic gaming system, and that was the DS. I remember I used to play Mario and Nintendogs on my DS all the time. Sometimes it brings a tear to my eye when I think about where my Nintendogs are today. I used to stay up past my bedtime and take care of my Nintendogs, and when my parents would walk in my room, I would put my DS under my pillow. Now, I like to think that this is a universally shared Gen Z experience. Until I was on TikTok a couple days ago, and someone made a video talking about this, and all the comments are Gen Alpha asking, "What's a DS?" Bro, I sat there looking at my phone screen like, I don't seem to be in the best mood, and that's because I'm not. I wish I truly would have taken my younger body for granted. And keep in mind, I'm only 20 years old, which in the grand scheme of things in my life really isn't anything at all. So then tell me, why the hell am I only 20 years old and I'm already starting to get back pain? Allow me to get a little bit vulnerable with you guys. Literally just yesterday, I was taking a shower and I dropped the soap. Whoa. Not that type of vulnerable. Chill out. And as I'm bending to pick up the soap, you know, I'm arching my back in a weird way. I feel a sudden pain in my back, which then causes me to slip and fall down inside of my shower. Now, this seems like something that would usually happen to somebody who's 70 years old, right? Like an old person. You do hear stories all the time of old people falling down in the shower. But 20 years old? Are we serious? I'm not going to be 70 years old for another 50 years. I really wish that I could say this was a singular isolated incident, but it's not. In the past 2 years, I've fallen down in the shower probably 3 times. Now, I don't possibly know what could be causing my back pain. Maybe it's because I hunch over a computer screen looking like a Reddit mod all day. That's all I have to say. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Let me know if you want to see more, and yep, I'll see you next.
He was just ranting the whole video. But hey, look, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one.